Hello and welcome to the WriteCome.com podcast, where we help you to make money from your words. Each episode will be sharing tips, tricks, and strategies you can use to make more money from your writing, publishing, and marketing to your fans and audience. Let's get started with your host, Barry J. McDonald.
Hi, this is Barry here, and you are very welcome to today's podcast episode from WriteCome.com. And today's podcast episode is entitled, I'm Just Too Lazy. Now, I received that in an email the other day. I don't know whether it was a podcast listener, but somebody had reached out to me and they had said they were looking to do something creative. I'm not too sure if it was podcast and writing or whatever, but they couldn't get started, and they felt they couldn't get started was because they were too lazy. And they were just asking me, did I have any advice on how they could overcome their laziness? Now, my first thought was I'll respond by email, and then I thought, well, why don't I record maybe a podcast episode on the topic, because I'm sure there's probably some people right now who are probably listening to this podcast and probably aren't taking action, maybe have a dream to be a self-published author or be a podcaster or have a YouTube channel or do something creative, but they're just not doing it right now because they feel that they are a lazy person. So what I'm doing is I'm going to record my thoughts in this podcast episode because it may help somebody else in the future. So if I was to sit across from this person, I would probably say to them, well, I don't actually think that there is such a thing as a lazy person. I think you're either motivated to do something or you're not motivated to do that. So if I was to sit across from them, I would probably say, well, why is it that you want to do what it is that you want to do? Why is it you want to record a podcast episode, or why do you want to write a book, or why do you want to have an online business? And what I do is I would get them to take out a pen and paper and start writing down all the reasons why they would like to do what it is they want to do. Now, I remember listening to an old audiobook by Tony Robbins, and he said at one stage in the audiobook was that if you have a big enough why, the hows don't matter. If you have a big enough why, it's going to be the thing that's going to keep you in your seat. It's going to be the thing that is going to keep you showing up regularly. It's going to be the thing that is going to keep you doing the work, probably when nobody's reading your books or nobody's listening to your podcast or your videos, whatever. But it's going to be the thing that's going to keep you in the seat because you have a strong enough why. And that why is almost like a future image or some kind of, great moment you're going to have in the future. And by visualizing that why over and over and over again and building a strong kind of bond with it, in that every step you take is going to get you closer to that goal, you will find out how will power you through all those moments. And as you said, I think if you've got a strong enough why, the hows don't matter because you're not focused on all the things that can go wrong. You're focused on the end moment and all the things that are going to come about, all the good things that are going to come about because you have, achieved that goal of yours. When I got into self-publishing in the early days, when I wrote my first couple of children's picture books and got into children's fiction, sometimes when I used to call around to a relative's house or friend's house, and sometimes they would ask me, how's the book going, how's the writing going and that, and sometimes maybe people who maybe didn't know that I wrote books, they would kind of look at me, do a double take and they say, have you wrote a book? Oh, that's something I would love to do. And they would talk and they would say, oh, they have all these ideas of great fiction stories and of this and of that, and they probably ask me questions like, how hard is it to self-publish? Is it expensive? What do you do? And I would walk through all the steps. I would tell them that, they need to write and the book covers and blah, 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 and go to the Kindle store and all those different things. And I could see them taking all that information, but I knew in my heart that it was just wasted on them. I knew that they weren't going to take action on, writing that book because it was like one of those wishy-washy ambitions. It was something that, sounded nice and sounded, something that they should always want to achieve, but they were never ever going to do it. It was almost like a cloud, that was just going across the sky on their mind, and there was no strength to it at all. There was no ambition. It was just simply a statement. Oh, I would love to write a book. And because of that statement, because there was no conviction in it, because there was no why or anything behind it, I'm sure when I walked out of the house, they probably never ever even went to Google and maybe YouTube or whatever, looked up a couple of videos on how to write a book or how to self-publish a book, or they never ever got back in touch with me. That's where that conversation ended. We never had that conversation again. They never got round to writing that book again. And in some cases, they probably never asked me how I got on my books in case I brought the topic of how was their book going, because they hadn't started and they hadn't done it. And it's because they hadn't got a big enough why. They weren't motivated enough to do it. So Again, as I said, what I would say to that first person is the person who had emailed me, what's your motivation like? What is the reason why did you want to do what you need to do? And get a list and write all those different things out. All the different things that you are going to be proud of because you have done that book. And if you find maybe that you can't have a strong enough why, there's nothing really there that pops out at you. Maybe it's because you are looking at what everybody else is doing. Everybody else is writing books, so you feel maybe you need to write a book too. Or everybody else has a podcast, so you think right now you need to have a podcast. And if you find maybe you can't come up with a strong enough why, and you have enough haven't got an ambition to do that, well then unfortunately I would recommend to that person not to do what it is that they are looking to do, because it looks like they haven't got a strong enough conviction. It looks like they aren't fired up to do it. As I said, I find it sometimes that when I do want to do something, and the more excited I am to write a book, or the more excited I am to get out here in the car or whatever, recording a podcast episode, it's really, really easy for me to turn it on, to get fired up and to record the episode or write my daily email or whatever, because I'm really, really inspired and I want to get it done. And I find that on days when, I don't want to do it, I feel lazy, I feel uninspired, whatever, those are the hardest days, and the days probably when my podcast is probably the weakest, my writing is probably at my weakest, or some days when I don't even show up, it's because I'm not motivated to do it. So on those days, you are going to find some days your energy levels are probably going to go up and down. You're going to be motivated for a while. Some days you're going to doubt yourself, then you're going to be motivated for a while, then you're going to be doubt yourself. So there will be some days when your motivation and your energy levels do go up and down. But if you do find that it's a long time, it's a long stretch, and you're just not motivated, maybe it's just not in you to do whatever it is that you're looking to do. Maybe you're not meant to be a podcaster, or maybe you're not meant to be a fiction writer. Maybe it's just not in your wheelhouse. When I was growing up, we used to kick the ball about, and everybody wanted to play in the Premiership, and everybody wanted to do this, and they wanted to play for Liverpool and Manchester United, and they wanted to have the crowd chanting their name and everything. But like many of us was actually inspired to go back to the football pitch on our own later on that day and practice over and over again, take penalty kicks and, try dribbling the ball and doing all those different things. There weren't many of us that would actually do, who do that kind of extra work. And because of that, then that's the reason why none of us actually got playing for Liverpool or Manchester United or whatever, because it just wasn't in our wheelhouse. I think if you are, if you have the talent to do something, you may find it maybe difficult in the start, but after a while you will grow a love for it, and you'll enjoy showing up and doing whatever you need to do. I'm sure Stephen King there's some days he probably isn't motivated to sit in the chair, but on the whole I'd say it is in him. He has a yearning to get whatever words is in his head down on a page. The same way I show up here regularly in this podcast. The reason I actually show up on this podcast is because my why is that, hopefully some episode or something that I say in this podcast is going to go out to somebody in the world, maybe somebody that I'm never ever going to come in contact with, but they're probably going to listen to this episode and maybe they're going to be inspired to become a writer, maybe they are going to be inspired to become a podcast or create an online business, or maybe do something that they have, had doubted for themselves as years that they couldn't do. Maybe somebody in their 50s has been thinking, up to this point, well, my life is half over or whatever, I can never be a writer, or I can never have an online business. Those things are only for the young kids. Only young kids can have YouTube channels, or only young kids can be podcasters. Me coming into the second part of my life, I should have started all that years ago. And the reason why I'm recording this podcast, as I said, is hopefully that I am going to inspire somebody to take on something maybe they've never ever done before, some creative adventure, something that they think is beyond them. There's no reason why they can't sit down now and record a podcast. And hopefully, maybe somebody may reach out to me in the future and say, Barry, thanks to you, I became a writer, and, I wrote 10 books or whatever. Or thanks to you, I have a YouTube channel and I've got 1 million subscribers. Or thanks to you, I have done something I've never ever done before, and because you inspired me, I've inspired my kids, and my kids have taken up writing, or they've recorded something, or they've done this or done that, and they've gone into a creative process. And because you've turned my life around, I have turned my life around in front of my kids and been an inspiration to them. And because of that, then we have, the family line has gone off on a different route compared to everybody else, where we always thought we needed to have a 9-to-5 job, or we couldn't do this because, no writer came from our town, or we never had a writer in the family. And because I took up writing, I have inspired my kids or whatever. So the reason I'm doing this podcast, like right now at the moment, I am sitting out in a dark driveway, sitting in the car, and I'm sitting in a cold car recording this podcast episode. Now, there's so many things I could be doing other than this. I could be sitting in now watching a couple of, things on TV, or I could be doing something. But it's not that I'm putting myself in a pedestal. I'm just trying to make you aware of, I'm inspired to do this. The longer I've spent actually recording this podcast, the more I've fallen in love with it, and the more episodes I want to record, because I want to reach out to more people. I want to grow my audience. Not that I want to do it for a kind of ego thing. It's just that maybe I want to get my message out in front of more people, that hopefully I can make a difference in more people's lives, and make them aware that they can be writers, they can be podcasters, they can do this and they can do that. Like, age isn't a thing that should hold you back. Whatever age you are right now, whether you're 70s or 80s, if you wanted to be a podcaster tomorrow, there's certainly no reason why you can't do that. And that's why I'm inspired to show up here. And that is my why. And maybe you're hearing that in my voice. Maybe you're hearing the excitement and the energy levels have gone up, because I'm thinking of the people right now that I'm getting in front of. People that I've probably never ever come in contact with. People who are all over the world, that I am reaching out to and maybe are listening to this podcast. So, as I said, if this person is feeling that they are lazy, it may be just that they aren't motivated enough to do it. And get that pen and paper out. Go through all the different lists of reasons why you would like to write your book. And again, if you find maybe that they are all wishy-washy ones, if there's no kind of strength in them, if there's nothing that can pull you into the future, when times are hard, maybe it's just that it's not in your wheelhouse. Maybe it's just that you're not meant to be a writer or a podcast or whatever. There's so many other things you can go to. Some other creative maybe path that maybe it might be more inclined to whatever it is you're looking to. So, as I said, that is why I've put this podcast episode, because I don't think any of us are really, really lazy. I think if we are inspired enough to do something, if we are motivated to do something, we have no problem showing up to do it, even on the days when it's tough or whatever, because we feel fired up. As I said, that's why I'm here in this car right now recording these episodes, because hopefully this episode is going to reach out to somebody and maybe fire them up, or maybe to double think what they're doing right now. Maybe the reason that they are wanting to do something is for the wrong reason, and maybe it might stop somebody, from making a mistake and maybe trying to force themselves to become a writer, or trying to do something maybe that's just not in them. So hopefully I helped this person out, as I said, that reached out to me. But if you find maybe that you are feeling lazy at the moment, have a look at what is your motivation, what is your why. And as Anthony Robbins said, if your why is big enough, it'll pull you through all the hows. So I hope I've helped that person out. Now, again, if you'd like to reach out to me, if you have any questions at all, if you'd like me to cover something in an upcoming podcast episode, feel free to send an email to barryjmcdonald@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to know more about what I do over on the Writecome site, if you're inspired to become a writer and maybe you just don't know where to start or whatever, head on over to Writecome. We have lots of great content over there. So do a search for Writecome. That's WRITECOME.com. You can do that on Google, Facebook, iTunes, or whatever. The content is all over the place. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you'd like to maybe share it with somebody else or like to subscribe, I would really, really appreciate it. So as always, thanks for sharing your time again today. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like more from the Writecome.com podcast, be sure to subscribe now for more tips, tricks, and ideas you can use to make more money from your words. See you in the next episode.